Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The WBC champion Deontay Wilder denies that he's a hypocrite in turning down the $100 million deal from Dazn, and largely he turned it down because he didn't know what Anthony Joshua was going to be getting in that deal. And he was asked a question in relation to this on the Boxing Voice. He's tried to defend himself, but in the process he has very much come off sounding exactly like the definition of a hypocrite. So hypocrisy is the practice of engaging in the same behavior or activity for which one criticizes another. And a year ago, Anthony Joshua was offered a $50 million deal. He was told to accept it within 24 hours, no fine print, no nothing, accept it or the offer is gone. And Deontay Wilder didn't know what Joshua was going to be getting for this Dazn deal offer, but his views on this, so we will go through it. Also in this video, I want to talk about some of the statements that Wilder has made about Vladimir Klitschko. They've reached out to him. They want to try check if his return is actually happening, because he is interested in fighting Klitschko. And also Wilder has made some impassioned statements regarding leftovers in the heavyweight division. So some interesting stuff to come. So buckle in. Let's go. So the Boxing Voice talking to Wilder with Patreon questions. A patron asked the question of Wilder. You mentioned the reason you turned down a $100 million deal with Dazn was because it wasn't disclosed to you what AJ was getting. However, you offered a supposed $50 million to AJ, but you didn't disclose what you were earning to AJ's team as well. Does that sound a bit hypocritical? No, it don't, because with that deal, it's self-explanatory what we was offering AJ. He was going to get the 50 up front, guaranteed. Of course, everything else is going to be splitted down the middle. He, out of the amount we anticipated was going to be made or whatever, we gave him 50% up front. The difference between me and Joshua was asking for 50 million. He said that out of his damn mouth. So, and he declined. He didn't take it. We called his bluff and he didn't want to take it. You know, that's the difference. I ain't asking for nothing. They want me on this particular thing for a particular reason, for that particular reason. Before we can do business, everything must be exposed. Everything must be on the table. Ain't no way in hell you're going into a deal not knowing the information, not knowing what's coming behind it, what's going for it, the small fine print. That would be a stupid businessman, and I'm far from dumb. Deontay Wilder's statements from to the Boxing Voice. I gotta say, when I heard this, my jaw really hit the floor, because the further he got into that response, the more of a hypocrite he actually sounded. So he was offered this deal from Dazn, and remember, that was going to be guaranteed money. It wasn't dependent on pay-per-view or whatever. But there's so many threads to this thing to unpick here, but we'll start with the guaranteed money from Dazn. So they were offering Joshua $50 million up front a year ago, gave him 24 hours to accept the deal. There was no contracts. It was a yes or a no, and then obviously work out the details later. Dazon's offer was, whether it was 3 fights or 4 fights, so 3 fights for $100 million, 20 for Brazil, and $80 million for Joshua fights times 2. So that would have been $80 million guaranteed to fight Anthony Joshua, you know, the first fight and the rematch. I don't understand what the difference is there. They're saying that we were giving Joshua 50 up front. That kind of seems like that's guaranteed. He was going to be getting guaranteed money from Dazn. The elephant in the room there that he kind of avoided was he didn't tell Anthony Joshua what he was going to be getting in that deal from a year ago. The $50 million up front, so he was talking there about splitting the rest down the middle, but he failed to mention, was he going to have some sort of guarantee? Was there an amount or something that he was getting before it split? Or was it all just off the remainder of the pot, which would have come from pay-per-view? None of those details have ever been revealed. We never knew what Deontay Wilder's end was going to be. Was there a guaranteed portion, or was it just all off pay-per-view, all from the remaining money that he's basically saying it was a $100 million fight? So Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn never knew those details. Fans have never known those details. Was there a guarantee that Wilder was going to get? And he kind of avoided that in his answer here. Although from what he is saying, of course, everything else is going to be splitted down the middle. Okay, splitted down the middle. So what does that mean? That if it was split down the middle, that it would have been a 75-25 split because that is the way that it's sort of saying. And certainly that's never been talked about in public before. But, that's the thing. He's been a little bit economical with the information that he's thrown out here. But Wilder goes on to say, they want me on this particular thing for a particular reason, and for that particular reason, before we can do business, everything must be exposed. Everything must be on the table. Ain't no way in hell you're going into a deal not knowing the information, not knowing what's coming behind it, what's going for it, the small fine print. That would be a stupid businessman, and I'm far from done. It's kind of incredible, those statements, because there was no offer, no contract. There was nothing that was given to Hearn and Joshua to examine the deal that was given from Deontay Wilder a year ago for the $50 million. It was, here's a deal for 24 hours. It's a yes or a no. They were not given the opportunity to see the fine print, the actual contract. And Deontay Wilder himself is saying that because he wasn't able to see the small fine print, say what Joshua was getting, for example, that it would be stupid to enter into that deal. So is he saying, and this is the only way that you can kind of take it, that it would have been stupid for Anthony Joshua to walk into that $50 million deal from Deontay Wilder a year ago, because Wilder himself says, ain't no way in hell you're going into a deal not knowing the information, the small fine print. That would be a stupid businessman. So it's kind of hard to fathom some of these statements here from Deontay Wilder, because the further he's talked about not being a hypocrite and defending himself, the more he sounded like a complete hypocrite in this situation. Because he didn't know what Joshua was getting, he didn't, in part, that was the reason why he didn't take the deal. Joshua didn't know what Wilder was going to get. It was a $50 million deal up front for 24 hours, yes or no, take it or leave it. But then he's saying in his comments here, you would never take a deal if you didn't know the small fine print, what's behind it, what's going for it. That would be a stupid businessman. I mean, it really beggars belief here. So does that mean that the offer wasn't really real? Because that's, you can sort of start taking a step towards that. Did they throw that up there as an offer, knowing that it would be turned down? Because from what he is saying, he would never take that same deal in his position. And as we know, he hasn't, because he's turned down this deal from Dazn, which is kind of the same thing. So yeah, I'm kind of a little bit dumbfounded by some of these comments from Wilder. It is a terrible look for him. And you can probably say over this deal, he's exposed himself a bit, and he completely looks like a hypocrite in this situation with these comments. Vladimir Klitschko, he was also, he came up in this conversation that they had with the Patreon questions, and they reached out to check out that situation. Was it actually revealed? And Klitschko, he has actually said it was an April Fool's joke. He wasn't behind it. It was a publication within the Ukraine, but obviously it went around the world as he was coming back fighting on May 25th. But the rumours about Klitschko returning have been persistent for about a year now. And he has sort of fanned the flames at times, sparring footage released and other comments that he's made about wanting to be a heavyweight champion, the oldest heavyweight champion of all time, etc. There's been every month or so, there's been something that keeps coming up. There's smoke to this, it's, you just wonder, is there really something behind it? Because it's not going away, and Klitschko is only kind of half-heartedly turning the talk away. So maybe he is prepared to come back, but will he come back is another story. But Wilder and his team have reached out to Klitschko to sort of see if he is going to come back, and Wilder said that he's interested in fighting him. And this is the thing that got me thinking about this whole situation with the heavyweight division, the respective factions and that sort of stuff. For the longest time, since Anthony Joshua's win over Vladimir Klitschko in 2017, a section of the Deontay Wilder fan base has been not willing to give Anthony Joshua any credit for his win over Vladimir Klitschko, saying that Klitschko was, old, he was washed up, he was finished. But what would the reaction be from those same fans and the people who've been criticising Joshua and not giving him any credit for what is a signature win? If Wilder fights him, is that going to change the paradigm here? Is that going to shift people's perceptions, and all of a sudden Klitschko is still a name worthy having on the resume? Because if that is the case, and this is where it's interesting for me, sort of sitting back, monitoring the division as a fan in general, I'm not a uber fan of either one of these guys or Tyson Fury, although, for Joseph Parker, he is my favourite fighter. I've made no secret of that. But I don't need to get into the fanboy politics, the back and forth, but some of the comments that have been made in recent years have really cracked me up, because I'm sure there would be an automatic shift to trying to say if Wilder fights Klitschko, that he would deserve maximum credit for beating the long-reigning champion. And if that's the case, does that mean that the Wilder fanboys who have been unwilling to give Joshua his due for beating Klitschko all of a sudden have to acknowledge that the win over Vladimir Klitschko was one that really deserved credit? Because that would be a massive shift in the landscape from what some people have been willing to do. Because there has been criticism levelled at Joshua that he's only been fighting old fighters. And that kind of, does actually not take account of he's fought guys like Jarrell Miller coming up, Joseph Parker, Dominic Breazeale, Dillian White. None of them were old. They were all under 30 or under 32 or whatever by the time that they fought Joshua. But there has been Vladimir Klitschko and obviously Alexander Povetkin more recently, and potentially, who knows, Kubrat Pulev down the line. So he has fought a couple of guys towards the end of their career, but that doesn't mean that they weren't good wins. And this is the thing. And it always cracks me up about the arguments, Klitschko was old when he fought Joshua, but what about Luis Ortiz? He was supposedly 38 at the time that he fought Deontay Wilder, yet Wilder's entitled to all the credit to that. I just think it's crazy. I think both these guys, for their wins, they deserve the credit that they get because they've beaten, good opponents in the last year or two. Anyway, there was also an impassioned spiel from Deontay Wilder at one point about leftovers, that the division is too small, that a guy can fight someone, he can still come back later on and fight someone else. There was he was really sort of worked up about this too, and to me some of that comes down to, well, one, it came straight off the back of the Klitschko comments, but two, also he's going to be fighting Dominic Breazeale coming up, so there could be the potential that Deontay Wilder could eventually end up facing two of Anthony Joshua's former opponents, and he will want to get ahead of this, well, you're fighting Joshua's leftovers comments, because there has been a little bit of that rhetoric coming from some Joshua fans trying to downplay, the Breazeale fight, but also, I'm sure other fans, Joshua fans, some of them would try to downplay a Wilder and Klitschko fight. And Wilder does have a point to an extent. The division is too small after, the talent, the depth of it is only so big. So some of these guys, after 2 or 3 years, they can end up coming back and have another title shot. We just saw it with Alexander Povetkin. Kubrat Pulev is making his way back round for a second go. Dominic Breazeale, Eric Molina had a couple of title shots. So there's a number of guys who've ended up having multiple title shots. So there is that point. But at the same time, it is a perception thing. Some people will want to say, as they did after Joshua beat Klitschko, he was Fury's leftover, he was shot at that point. And this is some of the argument that some of the Deontay Wilder extreme fanboys do make. But if Klitschko was to fight Wilder after having fought Joshua and after having fought Fury, this is why he's trying to minimize, well, this guy has fought other top opposition, he's a top guy, it's a small division. He wants to get maximum credit for fighting the guys who he's fighting. And I can understand that. So the whole leftovers thing, there's never going to be a set view across the board here. The division is too small, but at the same time, depending how many years have gone by and other factors, every case is different. Anyway, getting back to the start of the video, these comments from Deontay Wilder, what do you make of them? I couldn't really believe them when I heard them. I was just like, well, this sounds like the definition of hypocrisy. You weren't saying what you were getting in the Anthony Joshua deal. You wouldn't give him any fine print. Yet you're saying you would never take that sort of deal yourself. It really is the same behavior which he criticized Joshua for. So, beggars belief. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.